Hello children, today we will study the life process. The life process we are studying this chapter since primary school. Life processes means all bodily activities which are helpful for the organisms to survive and sustain their life on earth. They are what we call as a life process. Like for example, you have studied in the 8th standard the nutrition is one of the life process by means of which the organisms take in of the food materials and generate their energy requirements. And next is what the respiration. These two life processes we have already studied in the 8th standard. So today in this 10th class we will study another third life process, that is transportation. And the fourth life process is excretion. So in this year you will study the life process, transportation and excretion. So one more life process is there, that is reproduction. This life process we will study in a separate chapter. Now we will go to the transportation. Food system or transportation we will study. The transfer of the materials, materials in the sense the nutrients and the gases such as oxygen, carbon dioxide and the mineral nutrients which are required by all body cells. The transportation of these materials from one body part or one part of the body to another part is called transportation, and the system involved in the transportation of the material is called as transport system. Components of transport system. It contains three components. The one is blood, second one is blood vessels, and the third one is the heart. These three are the components of human transport system, and all these three are collectively involved together and performs the function of transportation. Now we go to the blood. The blood again is consisting of various parts. It contains the liquid matrix called as plasma. Then red blood cells or red blood corpuscles you can call. Red blood cells you can simply call RBCs. White blood cells, that is WBCs, and platelets. These are the components of the blood. And about the blood you know it is one of the connective tissue. And about this connective tissue you have already studied in the 9th standard. It is one of the fluid connective tissue, in which plasma is one of the fluid matrix. It is the fluid matrix which performs the process of transportation of minerals. Nutrients and minerals are transported by the plasma. And next is red blood cells. These are the red color cells which carry oxygen from one body part to another body part. And WBCs, they have nothing to do with the transport system. Instead, they provide immunity to the body. And platelets, these are the irregular shape. They help for blood clotting. And platelets play a very important role in the transportation, as because if any leakage in the blood vessels occur, that reduces the pressure inside and impairs the transportation of the materials. So during that time, platelets clot the blood and block the leakages and allow the successful flow of the blood in the bloodstream or blood vessels. Okay, so this is about what the blood we have studied. And next is what? The blood vessels. Blood vessels. There are three types of blood vessels. So we will study these three types of blood vessels in comparison. So they are the arteries, the veins, and the capillaries. These are the three types of blood vessels which help in the transportation of the materials. We will study all these three in comparison. Friends, easy. The arteries, they carry blood from heart to all body parts. That means arteries, they take away blood from heart to the different parts of the body. And secondly, the veins, they perform opposite function to the arteries. See, the veins, what they do, they collect blood from different body parts and dump into the heart. As arteries, they they take away blood from heart to the body parts. Whereas veins, they collect blood from different body parts and brings to the heart back. So that is, they carry blood from all body parts to heart. Okay. Capillaries. The capillaries, what they do, they help in exchange of materials between blood and the cells. That means the capillaries are in direct connection with the body cells. So any material which has to be exchanged between the blood and the body cells is carried by the capillaries. And next is, the arterial wall is very thick and muscular. They have got a thick wall. Arteries are thick walled, as because the heart pumps blood with a high pressure, greater pressure. To tolerate that pressure, the arterial wall is very thick, as they carry blood away from the heart. Whereas the wall of the vein is thin. These are thin walled, as because there is no pressure required for the veins, as they collect blood from body parts and dump into the heart. So therefore, the veins are thin walled and arteries are thick walled and highly muscular in nature. Whereas capillaries, the wall is single celled in thickness. Wall is single celled in thickness. That means their wall is made up of single layer of cells. That's about the second difference. And third difference, the arteries, there are no valves. No valves in the arteries, as because the blood is pumped with a greater pressure by heart itself. So there is no requirement of the valves to prevent the backflow of the blood. Whereas veins are having the valves. Okay, the veins are having the valves to prevent the backflow of the blood as they collect blood from all body parts and brings to the heart. And the capillaries, there are no valves in the capillaries. No valves. So this is about what we have studied is the three types of blood vessels in the human transport system. Not only in human transport system, it is present in all the mammals. So next part of the transport system is heart. Now we will study the structure of heart. Heart is a muscular conical shaped organ. It is made up of only muscles, and this is, we can call this as a pumping organ, as this pushes the blood around the body, and it is as big as one's left hand fist. Okay, so now my heart is of the size of my left hand fist. So this is the size of the heart, consisting of the 4 chambers. So upper 2 chambers we call as auricles or atrium, and lower 2 chambers we call as ventricles. So this is the right part of the heart and the left part of the heart. So this is right part and this is the left part. So therefore we call it as a left atrium or left auricle, left ventricle, and this is the right atrium or right auricle, and this is the right ventricle. And the right and the left part of the heart are separated by the septal wall. So this is called the septum, which separates the chambers. And upper auricles and lower ventricles, they are also separated by the valves. So these are the valves. They are gate-like structures. They help for closing and opening of the passage between the auricle and the ventricle. So this is about what the heart structure, and it is conical shape. Now, which are the blood vessels which are connected to the heart that we will study now? The right atrium or right auricle is connected with the superior and inferior vena cavas. That is, it is connected with the veins. So, what is the function of veins? We have discussed, that is, the veins carry or brings blood from all different body parts and dump into the right auricle. So the superior vena cava, this collects the deoxygenated blood from the upper part of the body, that is from hands, shoulder and the head and neck portion. So upper part of the body, from that part the deoxygenated blood is collected by the superior vena cava and dumped into the right auricle. And from the lower part of the body, deoxygenated blood is brought from the inferior vena cava and dumped into the right auricle. That means what? Right auricle is filled with a deoxygenated blood. Therefore, I have colored this with a blue color. Blue color, it represents the deoxygenated blood. From there, the blood is dumped into the right ventricle through the wall. So this we call as a bicuspid wall. So it is dumped into the ventricle through this bicuspid wall. From there, the deoxygenated blood is taken to the lungs for oxygenation. As because when we inhale the oxygen, so that inhaled oxygen is present in the alveoles of the lung. So up to where the branches of this artery, they reaches the lungs. So from the right ventricle, the blood is pumped into the lungs for the purification through this blood vessel. So this blood vessel is called pulmonary artery. This splits into 2 branches. So this is the left pulmonary arterial branch and this is the right pulmonary arterial branch, and each branches they enter into the right and left lungs respectively, where the blood get oxygenated and collected by, that is oxygenated blood collected by the separate set of blood vessels. They are called as pulmonary veins. So these pulmonary veins, they collect oxygenated blood from the lungs and dump into the left atrium. See, the veins, as we studied, veins, they bring blood to the heart. So therefore we call here the pulmonary veins. So up to this we have studied 3 types of the veins. So this is superior vena cava, vein, inferior vena cava, and these are the pulmonary veins. So there are 4 sets of the pulmonary veins, 2 from each lung. So all the 4 sets of pulmonary veins, they open into the left atrium or left auricle. Now the left auricle is filled with what? It is filled with the oxygenated blood. So therefore I have shown this oxygenated blood by the red color. So red represents oxygenated blood. Here blue represents deoxygenated blood. So now this oxygenated blood from the left atrium or auricle is dumped into the left ventricle. And from the left ventricle, it has to be pumped to all the different body parts. So that is done by the aorta. So this is the aorta is the biggest blood vessel in our body, and it is the strongest also. So when compared to the wall of the auricles, the wall of the ventricle is highly thick and muscular, as because they have to pump the blood. Ventricles have to pump the blood. Auricles, what they do, they simply receive blood from blood vessels and dump them into the ventricle. But ventricle has to do hard work. They have to pump the blood. That is, the right ventricle has to pump blood to the lungs for the purification. So therefore its wall is highly muscular and thick. And the left ventricle has to pump the oxygenated blood all over the body, from tip of the head to the toes. It has to pump. So therefore its wall is also very highly muscular. So the blood is pumped now into the aorta. Aorta is an artery, biggest artery in our blood vessels, and its wall is a highly muscular. Further, the left ventricle pumps blood with a greater pressure. So with that greater pressure only the blood rushes into the aorta. And aorta, by its contraction and relaxation, it pumps blood to all the different body parts. So this is how the entire heart performs the function of pumping the blood. Now, how the heart pumps the blood? By its regular contraction and by relaxation. Does heart contract and relax simultaneously or alternatively? That is the question. Simultaneously means what? Both the contraction and this is what? Contraction. And this is the relaxation. Okay. So, the question is what? Whether the contraction and relaxation they occur simultaneously or alternatively, one after the another. So, in case of the pumping of heart contracts and relax simultaneously. That means, so say for example, my left hand represents the upper auricles and my right hand represents the lower ventricles. So when auricles contracts, the ventricles relax. At that time, when auricles contract, the blood is dropped into the ventricle. Similarly, when the ventricle contracts, the auricles relax. That means when the ventricle contracts, the blood from the left ventricle pushes into the aorta and from the right ventricle pushes into the pulmonary artery. And when the auricles relax, so blood from the superior and inferior vena cava dumped into the right atrium and blood from the pulmonary veins is dumped into the left ventrium. So this is how the heart functions regularly. So it is called what? The contraction and relaxation, and this process is performed simultaneously. So this one contraction and one relaxation, we call it as a one heartbeat. See, once the heart does one contraction and relaxation, this is one heartbeat. So second, third, fourth, fifth, like this, the heart contracts and relaxes 72 times per minute. So contraction and relaxation of the heart muscles is 72 times per minute. So that, okay, so this is about what? The structure of heart. Now we will see the another aspect of the heart, that is, does So to complete one circulation in the body, so blood, when it has to complete one cycle or one circulation in the body, it has to pass twice from the heart. So I will tell you how. See, once it is collected from different body parts and dumped into the right auricle, from there right ventricle, from there pumped into the lungs. That is, this is one term. The same blood purifies in the lungs and again brought back to the heart, that is left auricle. So this, and again then to the left ventricle and pumped to the different parts. So this completes one complete cycle of the blood in our body. So to complete one cycle, blood has to pass twice from the heart. So therefore we call it as a double circulation. Now I will show you how the double circulation occurs. The heart, the right part of the heart, the left part of the heart, and here I have shown the blood vessels. So this is what the inferior vena cava, this is the the pulmonary arteries, and this is the also a pulmonary veins, pulmonary arteries, pulmonary veins, the aorta, and superior and inferior vena cava. I am explaining. Now the impure blood from the different body parts, it is brought to the right auricle and then dumped into the right ventricle. From there it is pumped to the lungs for the purification. So once it comes from the all different body parts, collected and brought to the heart, and from there it is carried to the lungs. So this is one way of passing the blood, and same blood here it becomes deoxygenated. Deoxygenated blood becomes oxygenated, and the same blood again carries or brought back to the left auricle and then to the left ventricle, and from there it is pumped to all different body parts. So this is what one cycle of the blood inside the body. So to make one cycle or to complete one circulation, it has to pass from the heart twice. So therefore we call it as a double circulation. Okay, and this double circulation we get to see not only in the human beings, we also get to see in the all mammals and the birds. So this, what are the advantages of double circulation? So double circulation keeps the oxygenated and the deoxygenated entirely separate. So there is no mixing of the deoxygenated and oxygenated blood. So therefore this is one advantage. Why? Because the apes and the mammals, they require lots of energy to maintain their constant body temperature. So to maintain this constant body temperature, see, when you go to Himalaya, if there the temperature is 0, so you cannot reduce your body temperature 0 to adjust to that environment. Instead, you have to maintain your body temperature. What you will do for that? You will wear a warm clothes, the gloves you will wear, sweaters you wear. That is what we are maintaining our body temperature. That means we cannot constant body temperature. The mammals and the birds require lots of energy. So that efficiency is brought by this double circulation by keeping the oxygenated and deoxygenated blood separated. So when we see the amphibians and reptiles, so their heart is 3-chambered. So we get to see the upper 2 auricles and lower there is only one ventricle we get to see. See, the oxygenated and deoxygenated, blood, they are separate up to the auricles only. When they are dumped to the ventricle is single, where both the blood they get mixed. That means what? The oxygen supply to the body cells is very less here. And this is enough for these amphibians, and because they are cold-blooded animals. That means cold-blooded animals means what? They can change their body temperature according to the surrounding environment. So therefore there is no requirement of energy to maintain their body temperature. Less energy is required for them. So this kind of mixing of blood is okay for the amphibians and reptiles, but this is not enough for the mammals and apes. So about 2-chambered heart. The upper one auricle and lower one ventricle. So here the blood moves only once to complete one cycle. That means when the blood dumped into the auricle, the same blood is pumped into the ventricle. Okay, and the same blood is directly pumped to the gills where the blood becomes oxygenated, and from there directly it goes to all different body parts. It does not come back to the heart. Whereas in mammals and human beings, the blood after oxygenation it comes back to the heart and again pumped to various parts. This system is not happening in the amphibians, that is fishes. So fishes, in fishes the blood moves only once from the heart. So once it comes to the heart, it is pumped to the gills where it becomes oxygenated and supplied to different body parts. So therefore, here also there is no need of separation of oxygenated and deoxygenated blood. Now we will study about the lymph. Lymph is also a fluid tissue which is present in the human body. So lymph is colorless. It is similar to the blood itself, but it is colorless. So, and lymph is formed by the blood itself. So, at what time the lymph is produced from the blood? So, at the time of when the blood capillaries, when they squeezes blood into the cells, at that time the wall of the blood capillary is single cell and the cell is also a single cell. And that means what? They are in contact with the cell to cell. Cell to cell contact is there between the body cells and the capillaries. At that time, when the capillaries squeezes nutrients and gases to the cells, at that time, some part of the blood, that is the plasma, some proteins and some amount of WBCs. The RBCs, they won't come out as because they are larger in size. Some WBCs, blood cells, some part of the proteins and some part of the plasma, it escapes out and starts to flow between the intercellular spaces. That means what? It comes out of the blood capillaries and flows in between the capillary wall and the cell wall. That is, in the intercellular spaces it starts to flow. So to that fluid we call as a lymph, and it is colorless. Why it is colorless? Because there are no RBCs are found. There are no RBCs are found and few proteins are present here. Is present. So therefore it is, and some blood cells are also present. Okay, therefore we call it as a lymph. And this lymph, what it does, it flows in another set of the capillaries. We call them as a lymph capillaries. When this flows in the intercellular space, it drains all the fats and digested fat molecules and the materials which are present in the intercellular space. They all are drained along with this lymph, and the lymph further flows in the lymph capillaries, and lymph capillaries, they together form the large number of lymph capillaries. They connect together to form a lymph vessels. So the lymph flows in a lymph vessel, and lymph vessels, they are further connected to the veins and they go and join the bloodstream again. So let us study transportation in plants. In plants like multicellular algae and bryophytes, there is no process of transportation as because their body is very small. In higher plants, for transportation of the materials, there are separate tissues called xylem and phloem. These two tissues collectively called as conducting tissues or vascular tissue. These tissues you have already studied in 9th standard. Xylem transports water and mineral nutrients from the roots to the upper part of the plant body, and phloem transports food, amino acids and other substances that are produced during photosynthesis in leaves to the different parts of the plant body. Now we will study the transportation of water and mineral salts. For transportation of water and mineral salts, the tracheids and vessels in xylem tissue of the roots, that are present in the roots, they join one above the other to form a pipe-like structure all over the plant body. This helps to conduct water and minerals that are absorbed from the soil. Now the question is how the water and minerals they move upward against the gravitational force. The cells of the roots, what they do for this process, they actively take up ions from the soil. So this creates difference in concentration of these ions between the soil and the cells of root. So therefore, this difference creates the diffusion of water and minerals into the xylem tissue, and this causes a column of water in the plant body. So this pressure alone is not enough to push water upward of the plant body. There is another strategy that helps for this transportation of water is transpiration. Transpiration is the process by which the plant loses water in the form of vapors. So plants, what they do, as you know that the leaves of the plant, they have what stomata through which they are continuously evaporating water. So this continuous evaporation of the plant of the water from aerial part of the plant body that causes the difference in concentration of the water molecules that creates a pull of water. So that helps to pull the water till the tip of the plant body, and this pull we call as a ascent of sap. Transpiration that it also helps to regulate the temperature of plant body. Transportation of soluble products of photosynthesis, that is food materials, amino acids and other substances, is called as translocation. It is done by the phloem tissue. These substances are especially delivered to the storage organs of roots, fruits, seeds, stem and two growing organs where the food is utilized or stored for the various purposes. So this is achieved by the use of phloem tissue. And transportation in phloem tissue is done by utilizing the energy. Whereas the transportation in xylem tissue, it is not using any kind of energy, it is achieved by the transpiration pull. Whereas transportation of food material utilizes the energy. Now we will study the another life process, excretion. The excretion is also one of the biological process involved in the removal of harmful metabolic wastes from the body. So usually the metabolic wastes are nitrogenous compounds. Excretion in unicellular organisms is very simple. It occurs by means of diffusion as the cell is single. By means of diffusion, the materials are exchanged between the cell and the environment. In human beings, there is a separate system for the excretion, and the nitrogenous wastes produced in the human beings are usually in the form of urea, uric acid and other substances. Let us study the structure of human excretory system. Human excretory system consisting of a pair of bean-shaped kidneys and a pair of ureters and a sac-like structure called urinary bladder and the opening called urethra. The kidneys are bean-shaped and are present behind the abdominal cavity, one on either side of the backbone. And the ureters, they collect the urine from these kidneys, waste material from the kidneys and dump into the urinary bladder, where the urine collects temporarily and eliminated out of the body through the urethra. Now let us study the structure of the kidney. When you cut kidney vertically, we will get to see the structure inside like this. The outer surface of the kidney we call it as a cortex, and the inner structure we call as a medulla. In the medulla region, there are about 8 to 18 pyramid-like structures are present. These are called as renal pyramids. At the tip of these renal pyramids, there is an opening called as renal papillae. Renal papillae, then it is connected with a tubule called as collecting duct. To these collecting ducts, thus millions of thread-like structures are connected. Those thread-like structures we call as a nephron. The collecting duct joins to the renal papillae, and then renal papillae opens into the empty space inside the kidney. This empty space we call as a pelvis. Then this pelvis is joined to the ureters, which then connected to the urinary bladder. And this depressed portion of the kidney we call as a hilum. Through this portion only the renal arteries and renal veins enters into the kidney. The actual process of urine formation, that is the filtration of the blood, is carried out by these millions of nephrons. Therefore, we call these nephrons as a structural and functional units of human excretory system or kidneys. Now let us study how the nephron is in its structure and what is the functions performed by the nephron. See, nephron is simply a elongated coiled tubular structure. At the beginning of nephron, we get to see a cup-shaped structure called as Bowman's capsule. This Bowman's capsule then coils to form a convolutions. This is called ascending convoluted tubule. Later it forms a loop, U-shaped loop. This loop we call as a Henle's loop. Then later Henle's loop again coils to form a descending convoluted tubule. This tubule then later connected to the collecting duct. To this collecting duct, numerous nephrons are connected. This is the common passage for various nephrons. And later this collecting duct opens into the pelvis through the renal papillae. And to this nephron, the blood capillaries are supplied. The renal artery which has entered into the kidney splits into numerous sub-branches, and those sub-branches they again splits into capillaries, and each renal capillary when enters into the Bowman's capsule, it splits into a tuft of blood vessels or blood capillaries. It forms a bundle of blood capillaries. To that bundle we call as a glomerulus. Actual filtration of blood takes place in glomerulus itself. The wall of the capillary, as you have studied, it is single-celled in thickness, and the wall of the Bowman's capsule is also single-celled in thickness. So therefore, the materials can easily be filtered in the Bowman's capsule. So this is about what the structure of nephron. Now we will study the formation of urine in this nephron. The urine formation in the nephron takes place under 3 steps. The glomerular filtration is the first step. Second one is a selective reabsorption. Third is a tubular secretion. The glomerular filtration. When the blood rushes into the glomerulus, this is the glomerula. When blood is rushed into the glomerulus with a high pressure, the materials and along with the excess water get filtered into the nephron. So therefore we call this as a glomerular filtration. As because the blood rushed into this glomerulus, the water along with the excess materials, that is urea, uric acid, excess minerals, excess amino acids, they all get filtered into the Bowman's capsule. And filtered blood, it goes away from the glomerulus and later connected to the branch of renal artery. Now during this filtration, only the non-essential materials are not filtered. Along with the non-essential materials, some essential materials are also get filtered. So therefore, this filtration is non-selective. It is not selective filtration. This is non-selective filtration. Along with the urea, uric acid, other things, the other useful materials, they also get filtered. So therefore, in next stage, the essential materials are reabsorbed by the ascending convoluted tubule and Henle's loop. That is, reabsorption is done by the surrounding blood capillaries. So, surrounding blood capillaries, what they do, they reabsorb the required materials from this tubule. So, therefore, that step we call as a selective reabsorption. That is, from the filtrate, the essential materials, if water is required, if amino acids are required, if some vitamins are required, they are reabsorbed by the surrounding blood capillaries. So, therefore, this step we call as a selective reabsorption. Later, the filtrate enters into the descending convoluted tubule. In this descending convoluted tubule, what happens? Tubular secretion occurs. That means what? When the blood rushes into the glomerulus, all the unwanted materials are not filtered. Some unwanted materials like urea, uric acid, they may enter into the blood passage. So, those unwanted materials are again reabsorbed by the tubule of the nephron. So, therefore, the tubule of the nephron, it again selects or absorbs the remaining material from the surrounding blood capillaries. Now, by this time, we call this material or fluid filtrate as a urine. Then urine is collected by this collecting duct and then dumped into the pelvis. From there, from this pelvis, the urine passes into the ureter and then it is collected in the urinary bladder. So, the color of the urine is straw color, the dry straw color. Okay, and in the urinary bladder, the urine is collected temporarily and then eliminated out of the body through the urethra. This is about what? The urine formation in nephron. Now, we will go to the excretion in plants. Excretion in plants is very simple. There are no separate organs, tissues or the systems for the excretion in plants, including higher plants and lower plants. The excretion in plants simply occurs through the stomata or through the leaves or through the bark in the form of gum, resins, etc. Through the stomata, the excess water evaporates in the form of water droplets, vapors, and the carbon dioxide and oxygen, they are also eliminated through the stomata itself. And some unwanted materials which are produced in the body, they are transferred to leaves because they periodically shed their leaves. By shedding their leaves, they eliminate their waste material. Some send the waste material to the bark. Usually, the larger trees, they send their waste materials to the bark because they regularly peel off their barks. Some, they eliminate their waste material in the form of gums, in the form of resins also. So, this is about what the excretion in plants. This completes the excretory system or excretion. Thank you.